Hi.
Hi, Peter. Oh, God. Let me get this silly old... I'm too old for technology.
When this all started, we were doing these Zoom things all the time, but it's been about 4 months since I've done one.
You're kidding. Oh, my goodness. Well, listen, welcome to Vancouver. Ha, 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 ha.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a whole lot of incredibly stupid questions.
Perfect.
Because I'm so fascinated by your career, your instrument. And so first of all, you were born in Belfast. Does that mean you're Irish?
Yeah, I was born. Yeah, so I was born on the island of Ireland, they call it. So I'm actually Northern Irish.
So what are your parents then?
My parents actually they moved over there. They're both English.
Ah, okay.
So I never really picked up much of the accent over there because
No.
when I was 8 years old, we moved as a family to Manchester.
Right.
So that's sort of where I grew up.
When you moved to Manchester, had you already started playing the trombone? Yes.
I had, yeah. I sort of fell in love with it really a little bit. My parents were both professional horn players. So the brass was very much in the family. My brother and sister were sort of doing it a little bit at that time as well, and they're older than me. And I just thought it was what everybody did, so I wanted to do it as well. They sort of, I think they sort of tried to steer me away from it. I don't know why. They wanted me to get an honest job or something. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But no, I was very persistent, and we used to watch the brass bands in the park.
Yes,
that's a big tradition. That's a tradition over there, and I sort of decided that I would play the trombone, and that would be that. And they said, "Oh, okay, then if you have to." I started aged 6 or 7.
Well, is there such a thing as a mini trombone as there is a mini cello?
I started on an alto trombone, which is kind of a little bit unconventional because it's the physics of it are entirely different. And without getting too boring about it, it's much smaller, but it's in a different key as well. So I still occasionally play it. It's that very much an instrument that's used in symphonic settings. So, but it's a lot smaller, kind of like a piccolo trumpet, I suppose. I suppose in a sense that you wouldn't play a mini cello in a chamber setting or in a symphony orchestra, but you would sometimes play an alto trombone.
There must be a hell of a lot more repertoire for the horn in chamber music and than there is for the trombone.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yes,
it's very sad. I wish there was more. I wonder if in years to come that might change, to be honest, because it's very much an instrument that has been discovered relatively recently, and composers are now starting to write for it, which obviously makes me very happy. But yeah, we don't have the full library of chamber works that the horn does, or even the concertos that the horn does, or even the trumpet. The trumpet even has the Haydn and the Hummel and I suppose even Brandenburg to some extent, and the horn with the Mozart and the Strauss concertos. But the trombone, not so much. We almost got a Mendelssohn, apparently. So the story
really?
goes. We did. We almost got a Mendelssohn, but at the last moment, I don't know whether this story is true, but I like to think so. Rumor has it at the last moment, Mendelssohn neglected the job and passed it on to the leader of his orchestra, who was called Ferdinand David, which has now become the most famous concerto. And I think he was a phenomenal violinist as well. We've got a David concerto, which sounds very like Mendelssohn, but isn't.
Well, I love that story of yours because I just straight away go to the place of printing a program in a symphony concert and putting Mendelssohn Concerto for Trombone and Orchestra, and then have you walk out and everybody is silent for about 15 minutes. And then you could go on to the Ferdinand David piece. That could be a nice April Fool's thing. Oh, well, that's fascinating.
Good.
So let me just tell you, I used to be a piano teacher, a music teacher in South Africa, and I had a job at a boys' public school. And in addition to teaching these 7 to 13-year-olds the piano, and they would come in off the rugby field and they would pull a piece of paper out of their pocket and shove it up, and that was the music that they'd be. Anyway, I used to do occasional sort of classes with my students where I would bring musicians in. Anyway, I brought a trombone player because I thought that would appeal to these young kids. His name was Malcolm Forsyth. He was a composer too, and he ended up living in Canada and made quite a reputation for himself. Anyway, so he played for them. And then we said, well, does anybody have any questions? And all the hands in the classroom shot up. And Malcolm said, yes, you. And the question was, well, what did you pay for that thing then? So my question is, in the rain, is there such a thing as a bad trombone? Are there levels of trombones, and where are the best trombones made? And tell me all about that.
There are bad ones made, of course. You don't really. I mean, I'm not doing any instrument salespeople or instrument companies any disservice by saying you do not get the level of craftsmanship that you would get with something like the violin. You know, where it's just such a delicate, sort of painstaking system, and yet there's obviously, but no means there's nowhere near the range of difference in instrument that you would get in string instruments. But I've always played instruments made by Yamaha. There's no particularly profound reason for this. I just like the way they feel and I like the way they sound. And you don't get a huge range in prices either. So you know, all the metals are kind of fairly similar. So it's not like some are not much more valuable than others. I mean, what is quite interesting is that you might try one and then try another that's supposed to be exactly the same, and they feel entirely different.
Really?
And you think, well, that's not supposed to happen. That, you know, they should be. You think they should be the same, you know, because a lot of them are machine made. Some of them are handmade, but some of them aren't. And you think they should be the same, but the feel might be completely different. The sound is different. It can really vary. Yeah. So I try not to think about it too much, to be honest. I think, you know, if you find an instrument that is able to make the sound that you have in your head, I think that's the dream, really.
And how long does it last? What's the lifespan of a trombone?
You know, I don't know. I think if you look after it, it can last you a lifetime. I know it's sometimes nice to have a change.
Yeah.
The metal does kind of rust away eventually, I think. But if you look after it and regular maintenance, which I'm not brilliant at, but then I think it can last. It can last certainly, you know, 2 or 3 decades, maybe.
You have more than one trombone?
Yes. Yeah.
Now,
about 4 or 5.
Oh wow! And so, what determines which one you're going to play?
Well, it's usually one of two. I mean, they come in different sizes. So there's a large bore, there's a medium bore, and there's a small bore. And if you were to listen to jazz musicians, they will be playing small bores, so they don't have all the additional plumbing that you see up here.
Right.
They don't have that. It's just a straight instrument. It's a much smaller bell, makes it a sort of thinner sound, much more direct.
Yeah.
In a symphony orchestra, you would get only really find large bore instruments now, where they make the kind of much warmer, mellow sound, which is the way the symphony orchestra's gone, really. And then of course you have the alto trombone that I mentioned earlier, used for kind of slightly earlier music maybe, or some really contemporary stuff where they want you to play very high.
Yeah.
The theory is the smaller the instrument, the higher, well, obviously the higher it can go, but it's more about kind of depth of sound, really. And the modern trombone now is all these kind of very big, large instruments, it is interesting because they didn't make that sound 50, 60 years ago. It was a lot smaller, it was a lot kind of brighter, direct sound. It would sort of instantly grab you and sort of hit you in the face almost. And they're not designed to do that now, really. So you have to work harder to sort of create that impact that you need sometimes, which I enjoy. Like I enjoy striving for that.
So now next question is, traveling on an aeroplane with a trombone.
Oh, no.
Is it too big to go in the overhead bin?
Well, if you worked for the airline, I would always reply and say, no, of course it's not. Yeah, I'm a bit naughty. Well, I mean, I've had some awful experiences, first and foremost. They do make it incredibly difficult. The cases they come in are actually quite small and long, so they do fit generally. Yeah. Some of those interstate planes in America is a different story. You know, there's tiny little planes where they just have just 2 seats and 2 seats. Oh, right. That can be interesting. I've run into a few difficulties on them before, but yeah, I mean, I've just had, sometimes they say, does that fit overhead? And I say, yeah. They say, well, what is it? And if they ask you what it is, it means they're not going to look inside. So I reply and I say, well, it's a violin. And they look on their piece of paper and they say it says that violins are allowed usually. So you know, I have to say it's a little bit dishonest, but I've had 2 experiences where I've put the instrument down and it's been with all the hold luggage, and both times it's come out damaged. Both times. So that's 100% rate of it going quite badly. So,
and when it's damaged, is it generally repairable? I suppose that depends upon the damage, but I mean the kind of damage it could endure.
Both times for me it has been repairable, so that's been fine. But I know of people where they opened up the case and it's just beyond saving. So it's really concerning actually, because you know, I mean, there's bigger problems with air travel at the moment than worrying about whether trombones are going to fit on or not. But there's sort of been before this whole pandemic started, there were still loads of troubles with you know, them sort of not letting instruments on board and world-renowned artists being turned away and saying, no, you haven't got a seat for this, you need a seat, and they all kind of try and make you buy an extra seat now, even if it fits fine. It's just that a lot of them have decided that the policy is that no musical instruments unless you buy a seat for it. So it's a bit concerning, really. But you know, hopefully there'll be a breakthrough soon. I don't know. I think the Musicians Union over here certainly have been fighting for it for a long time. So
well, maybe now with all this reduced travel, the airlines will have been a bit brought to their knees, and they won't be so difficult with instruments like cellos and trombones. Well, I mean, cellos don't go in the overhead bin anyway.
No, they can't. They need a seat. Yeah, but yeah, I hope so. Yeah, because it's what we do. I mean, I can't get. I mean, when full orchestras tour and fly from country to country, I can't imagine the logistical nightmares they have to go through when they transport all these thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars worth of instruments. It just must be horrendous for them, you know?
Yes. So how many concertos are there for the trombone, and do you know them all? I mean, have you played them all? Oh.
I haven't played them all. I've played most of the ones that I would like to.
Yes.
There are, and of course, there are still ones being written, which is fantastic.
Yes.
There are they're over 1,000 actually.
What?
Yeah, which is astonishing. The main person to make their living from being a sort of a full-time, the first person to make their living being a full-time trombone soloist was Christian Lindberg, great Swedish trombone player. And he has written on his website a list of his sort of top 100 most of which I would agree with, but there's actually, if you search hard enough, there's actually around 1,000. Now, if you ask me how many of them I would actually like to play, that number is a lot smaller.
So, just for a second, let me go to the ones you don't want to play. There must be, no, you don't have to name them. You don't have to name them, but give me an instance of one that you don't want to play, why you wouldn't want to play it.
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I've always been very careful to kind of expand my repertoire and try to appeal to people and new people, but actually, I think you still have to stay true to what you do and the very personal essence as an artist. And I've always found my qualities are in making the instrument sing and more of the more romantic music and romantic style music. I have always got more of a buzz out of playing that style of music, more than the sort of extended technique contemporary music.
Yes.
So I think I've probably, for example, one of the absolute great concertos is the Berio concerto.
Right.
It's absolutely fantastic. However, I've never really had the time to really learn it. Because some of the techniques that it's just sort of right on the edge of what is possible on the instrument.
Oh, really?
And I think in the past, I don't know, I've just almost thought, well, I don't feel like this is worth me doing it at the moment. Maybe at some point down the line, but it's never been the right moment to really attempt it. And I've never really quite got the same buzz as I have from some of the earlier, more romantic works. I've turned towards the more contemporary music more so in the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm really looking forward to kind of dipping into it a little bit more. I'm getting there's been a concerto written for me at the moment by a fantastic young composer called Danny Howard. She's working really hard on it at the moment. That's going to be premiered with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic in about 4 or 5 months' time. So really looking forward to that. So yeah, I'm very keen to have. I realise we can't live in the past. We have to look forward and get new stuff written.
And I suppose it's because of players like you that composers are thinking about writing pieces. So this piece that you're going to play, who commissioned that? Did the orchestra do that?
It was commissioned by the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. Yeah, so we're very grateful for that. And just what you alluded to there, that composers wanting to write for instrumentalists. If we're not careful, we get this sort of vicious cycle where because they never hear any solo trombone players, they don't write for them because they've not heard what the instrument can do. And it wouldn't cross that. It's not that they actively decide not to write for that instrument. It's just they've never really heard it in that setting. So it's I feel like it's almost a responsibility of mine and others that are fortunate enough to be in the position to do this, to actually bring the instrument to new composers, new audiences, new composers, so they sort of see what might be possible in the future.
So before COVID, you are still in the LSO?
Yes.
Right. So you must have been a pretty busy player with your orchestral and recital and or other engagements, right?
Yeah, incredibly busy. Actually, when COVID happened and I suddenly had nothing to do for 3 or 4 months, after about a month of it, I thought, actually, this feels new. This is quite exciting. I've never really had this much time where I haven't done anything. And I, if anything, I think a lot of people have felt like this, but I felt like possibly I've been a little bit overworked. And it's finding a way to kind of still do what you love, but avoiding the burnout, So yeah, it was an incredibly demanding schedule for me before, and I enjoy pretty much everything I do. And there would just occasionally be times in the middle of a great big LSO period, and I would suddenly think, well, actually, we've been working every day here for 4 weeks, and I'm very tired, and I would like to go and do something else. I've felt like that a couple of times. I've always been careful not to neglect my true calling, which I think is probably the standing out the front and sharing my instrument with people. That's what I've always been really passionate about. And if anything, I probably feel more comfortable doing that than I do sitting in the orchestra.
Interesting. Interesting.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I was looking last night before I went to bed. I noticed, and for some reason, I went to the website when Norman Lebrecht put on his slip disc that you'd been hired by the LSO and that you were the youngest, blah, 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 ever to have been hired. And you've probably forgotten about all this, or it probably isn't important enough even for you to think about. But I was fascinated, and don't usually do this, looking at the dozens and dozens and dozens of comments about the fact that you'd been hired by. The first comment, I think, was from somebody who said, oh God, here's a young genius and he's going to have everything squeezed out of him, and he's going to work in an orchestra which is going to crush him, and he's going to be working so hard he won't blah, blah, blah. And then somebody else wrote and said, how can you say that? And it just went on and on. And I was fascinated because I've never actually thought about those things. But what I did get the impression from reading all these comments is that, in fact, the LSO is one of the busiest orchestras on the planet.
Yeah, I think they've always been a busy band, and I think they have to be honest. I'm not. I don't really think they can afford to do less work as not as little work, but as I know some of the American orchestras probably haven't got as busy a schedule, and I think. I'm not sure. I think maybe conditions are better over there, so they don't have to. I'm not sure, but the UK orchestras and art scene generally is underfunded. So I think they probably feel that they have to do all that work to keep their revenue.
Yeah.
And also just exposing as many people as possible to the orchestra. I think one of the things that struck me when I first went to work with them is that they can deliver on any given day. That was what I was preparing myself for a world-class orchestra, which is what I heard, and that didn't really surprise me. What did surprise me was the ability to deliver an absolutely amazing edge of your seats concert after a 5-hour travel day, or getting off a plane because the plane was delayed, and sometimes there's been a mess up with the coaches and you don't get to the hotel in time, you go straight to the concert hall, or maybe they're tired, and it was that ability to just kind of pull it out the bag, which I thought was really, really astonishing. So
I think it's called adrenaline, isn't it?
Adrenaline, I think possibly, if I speak freely, I think sometimes that is taken for granted. I don't think players and musicians shouldn't be expected to be robots, and they need time to rest and practice and do other things as well. But certainly that orchestra has a real talent for just delivering amazing concerts all the time.
So, all right. Well, so what's your next plan? I mean, you're not playing. Are you playing no, you can't play as an orchestra now because you've got a stricter lockdown in Britain.
Actually, the orchestra's kept going through the lockdown because we're allowed. You're allowed to go to work if you can't do it from home. That's the terms of this most recent lockdown. I don't know. I can't keep up with what they're doing because it's just been a complete mess, to be honest with you. But so I think orchestras are still going, but of course they're not playing to anybody, and they're recording things to be streamed, either live streamed or streamed online at a later date. What am I doing? I took some time away from the instrument, which I haven't done since I was. Well, I've never done it since I started. I've never taken this long away from the instrument. I've just wanted to do it all the time. And suddenly I didn't want to do it because there was nothing in the diary and there was nothing to get excited about. So I sort of thought, well, actually, maybe it would be good to have a bit of a break and come back refreshed, which I have. I'm very refreshed now. I'm actually enjoying practicing again, which is, it's not easy always to enjoy practice. And I'm really enjoying it at the moment. I'm getting better again, which is something that we always have to keep doing. We have to keep exploring things and finding new music and finding new things about our playing that we want to improve, maybe. And more broadly speaking, I want to hopefully look ahead to a new dawn, a new season of concerts where we can get playing to audiences again. And I think when that does happen, it's going to be really, really special, really, really special. So I think looking forward to some stuff I do have in the diary from next year onwards, in the hope that it's going to feel even more special, and never taking it for granted again. I know that sounds like a terrible cliche, but
no,
actually,
I understand
it's easy
that.
when you're doing it so regularly. When you're doing it so regularly, it's easy to forget how fortunate we are to be able to kind of share our craft with people. So looking forward to that.
Tell me something. When you stop playing, I only know about the piano or the cello, which I played. So when you stop playing for a period of time, you have to technically get back into it. Is that the case on the trombone?
Absolutely, yeah. Just the very subtle things like just moving from that note to that note can suddenly become very, very difficult if you have some time off. We have to keep the muscles very supple, keep them in shape, in the same way that athletes train very regularly. We have to as well. The thing that I would say maybe is slightly different to pianists, for example, is that we have to be careful that we don't do too much playing. It's very easy to do too many hours and then all of a sudden the muscles are bruised and don't work as efficiently. So what I say to students and people that maybe ask my advice is that when you play and when you practice, be very focused about it, but be careful not to do too much.
Yes, of course.
So it does take a bit of time, but it's a balancing act. You're doing enough to get better and stay in shape, but not too much that you overexert yourself.
Yeah.
A little bit like a singer. It's very similar to a singer.
Yes.
So and what is also similar to a singer is the sort of the levels of insecurity that can creep in if things aren't quite right. Because we're certainly not robots and we can't guarantee something being bulletproof. It's a bit, I suppose, a little bit more complicated than kind of just muscle memory, because you can pick up the instrument and it can feel different every day depending on the weather,
Absolutely.
even what you've had to eat, had to eat that day, how much food you've had, how much you've had to drink the night before. All these sort of things will come into play. So
I always say to people, well, I think of when I purchase tickets for a live performance, whether it's theater or dance or music, whatever, you're always taking a chance because there's no guarantee what's going to happen on the night you bought the ticket for. Maybe one of the players will feel slightly off or something. It's a gamble. But the point is you want to be there when they hit an ace and when it's extraordinary and the whole audience is just holding its breath. And that's why and that's what's so special about live music.
I couldn't agree more. I honestly think it's so important that when this all ends, everybody supports live performance and gets out to the theatres gets out to the ballet, gets out to concert halls, and just supports it and realizes what they've been missing, because a recording on the best stereo system will only give you so much.
Well, it's been wonderful to meet you, as I expected. And let's keep our fingers crossed that we will actually get you here.
It would be great to come and be part of your wonderful series that I've sort of heard and read so much about. And
thank you. And it'd be great to have you, come here for quite a few days, and you can do some outreach with all kinds of trombone wannabe players.
I would love to. I've always enjoyed visiting Canada, to be honest. It's one of my favorite places to visit. I feel very at home. They're very, very relaxed.
On that note, a happier new year. Let's hope 2021 will bring us everything that 2020 deprived us of. And look after yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for the wonderful chat. It was really, really interesting for me.
Bye-bye.